All right, I just hit start streaming. Let's see if anything happens. Waiting. And for those who are watching this before or live, hello. I really hope this is whoop. We are alive. What is going on, everybody? And let's see. Sup, folks? Nick Fury. What's going on, man? I keep seeing all you woodworker folk over here. And it's cool because I've been watching you guys for a long time. Holy smokes. Hello, everybody. How are we doing this evening? First live stream. I'm very surprised that I hit go and it's doing things. How do I sound? Is it too quiet, too loud? Are we good? Yeah. Sweet. Awesome. Wow. Holy balls. You guys are ridiculous. So, this is the first live stream. I would love to see how this goes, and maybe we'll do more of these in the future. And I just want to do Q&A, and maybe we'll chat about some random stuff. And maybe in the future I'll do kind of topics, and we'll discuss various things. More of a long form deal. I'm going to see if I can go for like 45 minutes, an hour today. All right, so if you guys have any questions, we will jump straight in. Does anyone have any feelings about all this ridiculous camera stuff going on recently? Yes, I can read this. Let's see here. Look at some of these comments. Good luck keeping up with this. Are we talking about like all of this in general? Colin? All right. Let us see what we got. Favorite lens for the 80D. You know what? Well, I'll be doing more videos on this, on lenses. A lot of lens content is coming up on the channel. I know I've been doing so many LED videos, so we'll take a slight break from that and do some other stuff. But I've been feeling really bored with Canon glass, so I've been really enjoying getting into Russian lenses recently. So a lot of M42 lenses and lots of fun stuff there. Let's see. Thanks, Valley Films. I really appreciate that. Shout out my name, please, Billy Joe. Let's see. Starting a live stream. This is Bart. What software are you using? So, last night I was getting ready for this today, and I was like, I'll just hit, some button on Safari, and I'll be good to go. But it turns out to do live streams on YouTube, you need to use your phone or you need to use special software. So I am using OBS, which stands for Open Broadcast System or Stream or something like that. It's free, Mac and Windows, and it's working really well. I can actually, let me close this window because you guys don't need to see that. I can do stuff like this where I think this is going to show this here, but I can switch to my desktop and show a corner, myself in the corner, or just my desktop, back to the webcam. So it's really cool. You can set up different scenes and sources and stuff like that. So definitely check that out. Let's see what else we got here. I want to make my first video. Any tips and what is the best upgrade from an entry-level DSLR? I have a video coming up that I'm really excited about. I'm doing 7 or 8 cameras under $300. So 1080p, 24 frames per second. And there's a lot of really good cameras out there. So if you're shooting on a T2i, you can pick up a Sony mirrorless camera, APS-C sensor that shoots 1080, lots of great features for like $200 or less in some cases. So I'll be doing a video on that. I'm really excited about that one because everyone complains about not having enough for yada yada camera, but there's some amazing cameras out there if you're willing to not use 4K. Best blogging camera, I think he means vlogging. This is Style by Ellie. Right now, I just finished literally 45 minutes ago shooting a video on the best budget 4K vlogging setup, and that Panasonic G7, man, is just legit. Having that flip out screen, it's very responsive, so I have a video on that doing like an under $600 setup that works really well. Right, so I'm going to try to do my best, sorry guys, to keep up with these comments. A6500 or A7 II. I haven't owned a Sony full frame. I've shot on them and they're beautiful, but I just love that small form factor. I've got that A6500 right here. For $1,400, it's pretty incredible what you can pull off, so I'm a big fan of those. Favorite M42 lens? Right now, it's probably, sounds boring, but that Helios 44-2. It's a stunning lens. I found one, some guy that mods them, and I'll do a video on that before long. Do some grip videos. Hey, what's up, Grip Tips? Everyone check out Grip Tips. He's got a great channel, and he talks about grip. I haven't done many of them because almost every time I do a video on grip equipment, so C-stands and things like that, a bunch of pretentious film students come out and get all crazy. So I don't do tons of those, but there's so many great videos out there, especially from Grip Tips. What's up, Sully? Okay, I need to focus here on these comments. You got to review the YN600 David Griffin. Yes, I should. It's pretty dope. Pretty dope lights. I'm new to the infield DSLR video shooting. Learn the trade fast. I talked to someone recently via email. He asked about getting started. He's been, a film student and all this kind of thing. And the best way, I think, and I'll do a video on this or a live stream on how I got started, but I really recommend just volunteering, even if it means you're doing something like cleaning toilets in a studio, just some way to get in. And I recommend getting in a high quality scenario or studio or something like that at a very low level. So I'd much rather be cleaning toilets at a nice production house that I really like than being a camera operator in like a dying TV station. So that's probably the best way to jump in. Favorite go-to YouTuber? Oof, that's a tough one. It's probably... I'd have to think about that. I should probably do a live stream talking about YouTubers I follow. One of my favorites is actually non-camera related. I like to make stuff. Bob Claggett. He does some really dope stuff, and he's into electronics and woodworking and all that stuff, so that's a lot of fun. Entry-level drone, not really the drone guy to talk to. Left channel only for sound. Sorry about that. Maybe I can fix that at some point. I don't see any options right now, so I'll just leave it alone, but I'll check that out. Okay, Sony A6500 or G85 for beginners from Landon. That is the question I get asked the most these days. And it really comes down to, are you going to be behind the camera, or are you going to be vlogging or shooting YouTube videos without a monitor? That's really my big question for people. If you're behind the camera, the A6500 is really killer. I love this camera for that reason. But if you do anything where you're not seeing this screen right here, you got to go with a different camera. You can't use the monitor very well. Everything just kind of falls apart there. But it's an awesome camera. Otherwise, I use the G85 for like all my videos. That talking head stuff you usually see, that's all G85. Best camera for $3,000. Probably one of the, like an A7S II or the GH5 with some other goodies in there is probably what I'd go with. Let's see. Benefits of 4K resolution reframing. That's really taboo to reframe. But if you think about my videos and my main shooting space out there, I used to use 2 cameras. That means 2 4K files, 2 SD cards, double the importing length, double the setup time. It trickles all the way down through production. So having one camera, shooting that at 4K and reframing in post allows me to really speed up my production and get these videos out to you guys. Sully asks, what do you think of the C200 and the EVA1? They look dope. They look really awesome. They're a little rich for my blood and the kind of, I would think, kind of the things I'm doing. I don't really need something that monstrous for just YouTube videos. But if I was doing stuff out in the field, especially when you're running around outside and you need ND and all those little things, I think that's an awesome move, especially for people who have already been in that cinema kind of line. What mic am I using? This is a really cheap microphone. It's a Sonal large diaphragm microphone, and I was going to do some content on it, but it's not very good. It's really cheap though, so there's that. But it's an XLR microphone. You can find it on B&H, Amazon, places like that. I don't remember. I think they only make one, so that's what that is. Is the G85 worth the extra 500, or can I get a G7? Yeah, doing a G7 with a gimbal, this is from EPH, isn't a bad idea. So if you really want that stabilization, going with something like that is great. And then there's just a bunch of little things that the G85 kind of fixed. I love having the SD card on the side, all that little stuff. So, but yeah, the G7, man, is killer, and you can still buy it for under $500 brand new with a kit lens, which is ridiculous. Okay, am I going to upload the stream later? Yes, I will, so you can see that later if you need to. Am I the only one left? Channel only? No, you're not. Everyone's having that problem. I'm sorry. I don't know what's causing that, and I'll try to get into whatever is up with that later. Let me try this. Am I check. Are we still mono? Indoor, echoey space, cardioid, or shotgun. I guess it depends on mic placement. You can be in an echoey space with a cardioid microphone if it's close to you or whoever you're recording. If it's going to be further away and you're doing a really wide shot, then you're probably going to want to go hyper or whatever the next one is that I'm forgetting, low bar or whatever. Sound good? Okay. Audio isn't sync with the visuals. Sorry about that. How bad off is it? Best wide angle under $200. It's really, this is from Neum. It's really difficult to get wide angles that cheap. There was one, a 16 millimeter a prime I used back in the day. That wasn't too bad. Depends on which camera you're on. If you're on like a Sony or Panasonic, you can probably find something pretty affordable. I really like for Panasonic the 14 millimeter f2.5. It's a great little lens. All right, cinematic lighting tutorial. Yes, I'm gonna be doing more how to light, less here's some lights that are really dope. So hopefully that'll work out well. Cheapest wireless follow focus, not sure. Sync is good here. Okay, good to know. Sony or Canon for video? Sony, unless you're gonna fork out a decent amount of cash. Is 1080p worth investing? That's a good question. It depends on what you're up to. For me, 4K is what I try to do most of the time, just because it gives me lots of flexibility, it looks good, and yada, yada, yada. But if it means, having a small camera that I can run around with, there's a lot in the budget too. You can, like I was saying earlier, you can find some really amazing 1080p, 24 frames per second stuff very affordably out there. Oh, right. Best type of mic to hang from a ceiling in a room. A dark room, actually, for streaming purposes. That's a good question. It depends on if, how wide the shot is. Something like this is pretty acceptable for a stream. Sorry if that made a bunch of noise. Where you have it kind of in the frame. If you're going to have it out of the frame, probably a shotgun. Previous to having this microphone, I just used a Rode VideoMic Pro, and it worked really, really well. Is 4K overkill for YouTube? If you're just shooting 4K videos and people are all watching it on their phone, yes. But if you're going to be shooting in 4K and creating kind of 2 camera angles and things like that, I think it's nice. And believe it or not, even if, little tip for you YouTubers out there, if you shoot at 1080 and upload a 4K file, so essentially upscale it, you're not going to see that much of a difference on YouTube, and you'll get that little 4K tag next to your video, which YouTube actually, that helps you out a little bit. Just like VR stuff, YouTube wants to kind of promote that stuff. So having 4K might give you a slight bump. It's probably small, but it's something. And, kind of shows people that you're keeping up. Not that, it's superficial, but just it is what it is. What do we think about the new iMac from Lucas? I was really impressed with that. When I first saw that, all right, we're doing a Pro iMac, I thought, okay, they're just gonna like bump it in a couple places, but that many cores and that much not expandability, but you can buy a machine with that much stuff is pretty impressive. I'm personally gonna hold out until the Mac Pro comes out next year or whenever they do that. And the Hackintosh, which I'm using, and I really need to do a video on. I know I'm way behind on that. Has just been a champion. So I might, depending on what the Mac Pro does, I might just keep upgrading my current machine. What is the best lens for A6300? wedding films, Sony lenses, because you can take full advantage of that awesome autofocus. The 20, what is it? I'm completely spacing. That they have a zoom lens that's $600 roughly. That's just really amazing. I'll be covering that. Good evening, Karen Maxwell. How are ya? Let's see. How much of your monthly production income should you spend on a growing business and gear? That's a great question. I did a live stream on YouTube or Facebook for Aperture, and we discussed gear, specifically just budgeting for gear. And I think your camera should make up a very small percent of that. There's better things you should be investing in. You just kind of play it out. You know, if you're getting started and you need a lot of things, you might put a little more toward that budget. But I wouldn't put more than the basics. So essentially, you need a good set of sticks, your camera, a lens, a zoom lens that's really good, maybe a 1 prime, and some audio gear, especially audio gear. Spend more on that than your camera setup. Once you have the basics and you can shoot an interview if you're doing commercial work, save and put more into your business and wait until there's more work, then invest in more stuff. I would definitely invest in an extra sound guy or something like that, having crew over having more gear for sure. Sweet. Bart's going to be doing a live Aperture event. Aperture is pretty dope. Not paid by them, but, you know, I just really dig their stuff. All right. Why doesn't anyone talk about Fuji mirrorless? I probably should just force myself to shoot with one, but every time I've pulled up the specs on one, there's always been something that's like, what? You know, why is that the way that is? So, it just doesn't seem like they're as well-rounded for video, so that might be why. But I really do need to just bite the bullet and check those out, because a lot of people ask me about that and don't seem to be covering that. $1,000 lighting kit video still happening? Probably. I need to kind of see what I have currently and what all is going to go into that, but I do have more of those kit videos coming out, and I will be doing a video on my setup for out in the shooting space there, so just everything I use to make a YouTube video and talk about some of that stuff. Good $50 LED panel. I did a video on that, and this is from K Slater 777. So I got a bunch of LED videos out there, and in those videos I talked about $50 panels that are really good. Probably one of my favorites, that YN300. It's just a great little solid light. Best stabilizer according to you for the 5D. I've been using the Zhiyun, or however you say that, crane, and that's dynamite. And I still haven't done a video on it, but it works really well. I don't know what the weight limit on it that is though. What audio kits? What will you do? Audio kits? Yes. I am going to be doing a video on like a $50-$70 versus like $700 setup. Not to be like the iPhone versus Red kind of guy, but just to show you when you're saving money on audio, what are you losing? And it's not just quality; it's a lot of little things, security, redundancy, things like that. So I will be doing some audio kits. Will we see a documentary guy like the corporate video guy? This is Sully. Probably not for a little while. Those guides, man, they take so much time, and I really hate taking away from this channel. So that's, you know, the reason I haven't been doing longer ones like that. It's expensive, especially when you hire other people to help. So maybe down the road, I'm hoping to eventually have a studio with several employees and whatnot down the road, and that might make it possible. All right. Thank you for the kind words. Martin Boot means a lot. Okay, let's see. Should you invest in Windows, Mac, or Linux if you're a videographer? Mac or Windows? Sorry, Linux. It's just not solid enough and not very collaborative yet, to my knowledge. I'm a Mac guy, so there's that. There's also the Hackintosh thing, which is totally legit. I've been doing that. I've been running a Hackintosh. It's around $1,000, and that includes a graphics card you wouldn't really need to use for video editing. And I've been doing that for, I think, over a year now, and it's great. I edit 4K on it, no problem. I don't bother with transcoding anything. I just throw stuff at it, and it does a great job. Let's see. Best PC. I can't talk about PCs because I don't really know that much about them, but I'm sure someone has builds on there. Eventually, I'll post. There's a site called PC Part Picker. I know it's a mouthful, and they have a awesome service. You can essentially start building a machine. It'll tell you if it's compatible or not, and give you the places that all the parts are cheapest. And I'll post a link to my system, and that might be a good place to start. Someone's yelling at me for not answering their questions. Super Shooter, hi, I'm a huge fan. How's it going? Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I had no idea this was going to be a thing and that this would be... I really apologize for those who I haven't answered questions to. I'll do my best here to keep up with that. Let's see. What is the second thing you would get after a camera and a lens? Probably a microphone, or like a solid preamp. Even, you can get a all right microphone, but if you have the most expensive microphone in the world and you're running it into a camera that doesn't do so well with sound, a preamp is definitely what you want to invest in. Can you tell us about your work outside of YouTube? So here's the deal. I used to be a full-time corporate shooter. So producers, directors would hire me to show up, and I would do grip/camera operating as well as editing. And that was my full-time gig. I worked for like 3 guys. I narrowed it down to 2 and then 1 eventually. And that's all I did. And then I started the site, this whole thing, in 2010. And that became full-time, I would say, completely 3 years ago, maybe a little longer. So pretty much what you guys see on this channel is my job. And a lot of people, think that's not legit anymore, that you need to be shooting on the side, and I totally appreciate that. But more and more my passion is helping YouTubers and helping people who want to create content or any kind of interview, corporate shooter, that kind of thing is really my sweet spot. So over more and more, I just really want to help people kind of figure that out, because there's a lot that goes into that, and there's a lot of poorly lit videos and audio, and mainly because I wish I had this stuff when I got started. There's so much to figure out when you're getting started. So my goal is to produce a bunch of content and really help those guys out who are just getting started, as well as obviously all of us kind of in intermediate and expert as well. Yeah, whatever. All right, let's see. Hackintosh, Mac or Windows? Personally, I would go with Hackintosh. Can you do a rundown of paying taxes for freelance videographers? I would right away Google and find a good CPA or a bookkeeper and have them walk you through it. I've done both methods. I did the whole figure it out on your own and ended up buried in a pile of paperwork, and it's a nightmare. The tax code's really difficult these days, so I would just find someone. There's a lot of people out there that aren't crazy expensive, and you'll be so happy you did that. Okay, let's see. Have I ever been tempted to go into photography? No. I for a long time had zero interest in photography, and I have a little more now, but something about video just bit me, and I can't get away from that. I've shot a few friends' weddings, and I greatly disliked it. I have a huge respect for photographers, though, and photography as a whole. I'm not saying it's irrelevant, but it's just not my cup of tea. But, I'm warming up to it, and I shoot photos here and there, but it's not my favorite. Let us see. Any idea how to gel the 120D using the light dome? So if you're using a softbox on a light and you want to gel it, most of them have like flaps that can open up near the back of the light. So I would just put a small piece of whatever CTB, CTO, whatever you're doing there, and mount that near the light source, not too close, because that LED is still pretty hot, so you don't want to melt things. But that's probably what I would go with. Okay, so I lost it, but someone said something about DaVinci Resolve. Sheer Video, have I tried it? No. I would love to. I just need to find some time to sit down and play with that. But I think that, I love someone else getting into the mix. It's been a Final Cut / Premiere game for a long time, so I'm excited to see what Blackmagic does with that. Okay, good. Let's see. Any tips for aspiring filmmaker in high school? Do I get a job for money or film part-time or try to find a job in film? You got to do what you got to do. So for me, putting food on table is number one, roof over the head. You know, that's going to change depending on where you are in life, obviously. So if you're living with your parents, now is a great time to study up and shoot a ton. Find somewhere where you can volunteer in a film capacity of some sort and do that as much as possible. And that's probably what I would do if you're in high school. Do I have kids? Yes, I have one son, and he is 16 and a half-ish months. So that's awesome, and that makes doing all of this like much more purpose behind it. All right. Let us see. Okay, so Ray is upset about me not answering. So hit me with a question. I'm sorry I haven't been able to keep up with these. Best budget key light, Eric. I got a video coming out on that, and it's essentially a softbox that pops open and it closes up real nice, and it has a socket. And I'm going to be doing a video on LED bulbs. So get this, there's actually bulbs out there. They're not really bulbs, but they have the traditional socket for a light, but they're LED lights. So you can take all your existing softbox stuff from ePhoto or wherever and throw an LED in it, and you're done. So no more fluorescence, great output, and pretty good color. So I'll do a video on that shortly. Okay. What is a good starter DSLR camera? If I was starting today and I had under $500, I'd probably go with some used like Sony camera or the Panasonic G7, depending on where you, where you land on that budget line. Did I study cinematography with books and the internet? Yes. At school, no. I actually only did one semester of college and then quit. I wanted to go into film school, couldn't afford it, decided to go for a business degree, hated college, just sat in a classroom for accounting and just zero interest. And I was more and more getting into this kind of thing and decided to take a break and study film and start volunteering wherever I could. And that's how I got into it and then started this site. What do you do with your files after the final edit? So I'm hoping to do a video on this. I feel like a broken record saying that all the time. But essentially the way it works is I bring stuff onto a RAID right next to this computer here. I edit everything. When things are done, they usually sit here for a little while. And then I kind of batch move things over to my server. So I've got another computer out that door with a couple massive 8-bay drive enclosures that are really cheap, actually. Mediasonic, if you check them out on Amazon, they've got some really great USB 3 stuff. And then it all goes on there and it gets backed up to another RAID. So it's like in 5 places and it goes up to Backblaze. So yeah, that's how that works. And I'm going to try to break that down in a more visual manner at some point. C200 thoughts, looks really slick. Probably not for me. I don't see a reason to be spending that for RAW and for all of that stuff here in a YouTube studio. But again, back when I was shooting interviews, hundreds of interviews a year, that would have been awesome. Any of those cameras would have been amazing. We were using 5Ds and 7Ds, and it sucks. Okay, Anthony says there's a fix for the audio. Awesome. I will investigate that for sure. And get that fixed. So the next time we do this, the audio will be taken care of. So thank you for that. Appreciate that, Anthony. That means a lot. Canon versus Sony. Sony. Please do more DIY videos. I do have some coming up. I'm going to be doing, I'll save that for another time. But I will be doing some LED lights and some things like that. So stay tuned for that. Okay, let us see. Scrolling. Awesome. Thanks, Pivot Films. He really enjoyed your A6500 course. Zeiss 16-70. Very nice. That's a nice lens. If you're looking for a pretty great wide. Okay, is cropping in good for cinematic? Oh man, scrolling's happening. Hang on. Okay, nice, Colin. Yep, Aperture H198 that's a good light. That's a great budget light. Thoughts on the EVA 1 or EVA 1 or whatever they're calling it? I'm excited. I think that's a good price, and I think it has a lot going for it. I'm excited to see how it performs in the field. And I'm also really loving how more and more manufacturers are kind of doing a smaller body with everything on it instead of having a handle with all the stuff built onto that. So I love the form factor of that camera and how we're going to have a larger sensor. We're going to have XLR built on, so you don't have to have the top panel unit like you do on the C whatever 100 camera. And that monitor, moving that around, I think that's really slick. And of course, all the great stuff that camera is going to be able to pull off image-wise. All right. What do you recommend as a cheap Micro Four Thirds from Gustav? Depending on what you define as cheap, the G7. Otherwise, the GH2. There's one on my shelf over there. That's fun. The GX7 is a affordable camera now. Great little kind of rangefinder vibe camera. A lot of fun to shoot that. All those are great cameras, so you can definitely find them out there. Favorite focal length from Joshua Stoke Films. That's a tough one. Probably 28, maybe 35. One of my favorite things to do is to shoot at a slightly wide to medium wide focal length at a really low f-stop or t-stop. So like a 28 millimeter f2 or lower. I love that look, especially when you get close to your subject. So you get this really personal feeling by being so close and intimate with your subject. But you get that wide field of view and that faster shot, which is really slick. What camera would you recommend for videos? I'm trying to shoot music videos, G85 or A63, A6500. I'd probably go with the A6500 for a music video. You're going to be behind the camera. You're going to have that autofocus, better slow motion, and better low light, which could be huge, especially for music videos. So that's probably what I would do. Best budget 7-inch monitor. I'm not sure yet, but I actually purchased 10 or 13 monitors, and I'm going to be doing a video on the best 7-inch and the best 5-inch, all under $200. So we'll have a ranging price between $100 and $200, and I'll do that, and I need to do that so I can, I'll probably sell those to you guys afterward or something, because that's I don't need 13 monitors here. But there's some good stuff out there. So if you need something on the budget, that's good. All right. Let us see. Small HD too pricey? Question mark from Fallen Stars. I think their focus is really on point. A lot of their stuff is very expensive, and I think they've definitely moved kind of into that pro market. But that focus is going to be pretty legit, so I'm excited for that. Craigslist or eBay for used gear? Excuse me one second. Kind of got a cold thing going on here. And yes, so I'm an eBay guy. Craigslist, people just bail all the time. You set something up and they just fall apart. So eBay is my jam. I usually always do buy now. I check for a legit buyer, make sure they have returns. And then I don't just impulse buy if it's the cheapest thing available. I'll often save the search, and then I'll get daily emails until I find something I'm happy with. But yeah, eBay's great. Great for buying stuff. Okay, plans for GH5 guide from Scott. What's up? Yes, GH5 guide's going to happen. I'm waiting on that update for that, the 400 megabits and the 6K and all that, because I want to make sure this guide is, you pick it up and you're done. Everything is covered, completely everything. So I'm trying to work with SLR Magic, see if I can get some anamorphic gear to play with and do some 6K stuff there. So that'll be really exciting, but I'm waiting for those firmware updates. So it's going to happen, but that's what's up there. Okay, best picture profile for cinematic look on the G85. I usually just shoot on natural for almost any Panasonic camera, and then I drop the contrast, sharpness, and noise reduction all the way. GH4 or GH5 these days, it's hard to recommend the GH4. The G85 is right there. It has a wider field of view at 4K, better at low light, but you're missing the audio stuff. So if audio is key in a camera system, then the GH4. Otherwise, the G85 is probably what I go for. All right. Let us see. Canon 6T Rebel? Probably not. Everyone still, or not everyone, a lot of people still talk about those DSLRs for kind of a budget thing, but hop on eBay and look at like a Sony NEX5, NEX6, A6000, A5000. You'll find some pretty good deals, and they're legit little 1080p cameras. All right. Do I ever have planned to do a short film? Probably not. If there was the right group of people, I would be down for that. Narrative isn't really my thing, just because to do it well, you really need some solid actors, and that's just so hard to find. And to get a group of people together to do it well. So that's probably... Now, documentary I'm a big fan of, and I might do something like that in the future. How do you sell yourself or sell your production company? Work, having solid work. I was emailing with someone the other day, and he felt like he was kind of behind on some things and wanted to get more into film, and I just recommended he shoot a lot of projects and finish them. So if you can show a producer or director that you have the ability to produce and have a finished product in several of them, that means you're, a finisher, you get things done, and that you can, get sales for people by having projects completed. So just shoot a lot and do real projects. Don't just shoot tests or little visual films. Those are great, but really try to find a story somewhere, show that you can tell a story, and potentially make someone money, and that's good stuff. Oh my gosh, sorry, that's nasty. Did I copy DSLR guide? No. Simon over there, awesome, very talented guy. He's definitely doing a lot of narrative stuff, so if you're into that, check out DSLR guide. Didn't stop. I don't know when he got started. I think we may have gotten started around the same time, but he's blowing up. He's got some great stuff. Do I earn money from stills too? Nope, I don't do anything stills related. Best sports documentary camera under $1,500? That's a tough one. I'd say the GH5 just because of frame rates and lack of rolling shutter. Probably something from Panasonic. Sony, you're going to get in trouble with that rolling shutter. Sorry about the left ear only, guys. I'll have to fix that. I apologize. Let us see. What do we got here? Best budget rig. I'm not as much a rig guy anymore. I'm a big cage fan, so having a cage to protect your camera and add some stuff is great. Usually a cage with a top handle is kind of how I roll on the rig front. GX85. I should have done content on that and / should do content on that. I feel like it's so similar to the G85 that I haven't done. I don't see the need as much or as much pressure to do it, but I love that smaller form factor, so that's really slick. What do I think about the D3300? I haven't shot on one. I've been involved in a project where someone used one, and it's all right. That was like 2011 or something. Had a laugh watching Craig This is from Scott. Had a laugh watching Craig Adams' newest video. My first thoughts was looks like a Caleb video. Oh, the foam. Yeah, everyone should check out Craig Adams. I was thinking about him recently because look back here, just we are complete opposites. He's going super minimal, and I feel like my studio is more like a really ghetto version of Tony Stark's setup in his basement or wherever he has Tony Stark's shop or whatever. And more like the Millennium Falcon. There's just stuff everywhere. So, yeah, but he's got some great stuff. I really like him. Best budget camera. looking to get started. Yeah, so I'm going to be doing a video on 7 cameras under $300 that shoot 1080p and 24 frames per second. It's going to be a pretty dope video. There's some really surprising findings that I found. So we'll get to that hopefully before long. Sorry about the left ear thing. It's going to get fixed at some point. Do I think Sony is still a good company to invest in? Yeah, I do. A couple thoughts there. Like, first of all, how about that full frame news for future cinema cameras from Sony? That's pretty exciting. The only thing that bugs me about Sony is, well, first of all, there's Panasonic, so it's hard to choose for me. They're so good. Both of them have really good strengths, and they also have weaknesses. But the Sony thing, to get in on the full frame setup, it's so much more expensive. If you're going for full frame lenses, it's really pricey. So you just got to think through all that stuff. What's best to shoot, 24 or 30? I always shoot at 30 frames. I'm sorry. Wow, almost said that. I always shoot at 24 frames per second. It's so much more cinematic to me. I much prefer that look. The only time I'll shoot at 30 is if I just want the most subtle of slow motion. So if you shoot at 30 and then drop it in a 10 or 24 frames per second timeline, retime that, you'll just get it just takes the edge off. There's a little bit of slow motion there, and it's great. It's really good stuff. What about 48 frames? Same thing. I'm not really on board with the whole Peter Jackson philosophy there. I used to use Twixtor back when it was a struggle with the DSLR days, but I haven't used that in a long time. It's pretty amazing software though. Best budget tripod with a fluid head. I really love Benro stuff. I know there's a bunch of kind of budget stuff on that people have talked about. I'm trying to remember the brand, but there's some decent ones out there. Is Canon dead for video? Not on the low end potentially, but they're killing it at the kind of intermediate to pro market. Their Cinema Lines cameras are just fantastic. No matter what you think about pricing and whatnot, they're just good cameras. They're really good. And if they can kind of keep up with the 4K thing, I think they're going to continue to do well. But, people say they're dead, but they're still out there making tons of money with those cinema cameras. And you see them everywhere. They're all over the place. Okay, should I get a speed booster for the GH5 or native lenses? That is a really good question. That's a tough one. I more and more leaning to native. You're going to lose a little bit of that shallow depth of field, but that 12 to 35 on the GH5 is fantastic. Now, another way you can approach this is get a focal reducer, so not necessarily a Metabone speed booster, and get a manual model. So if you Google like Canon to Micro Four Thirds focal reducer, there's lots of sub $200 options out there. You might not get that electronic connection, but you can still use big juicy lenses like this one, which is a 50 millimeter or 55 millimeter 1.2 for very affordable, and use a focal reducer for very little. So you don't have to spend $650 on a speed booster to get into that game. So that's probably what I would do. I'd do native lenses for your for your main zooms and autofocus stuff, and then go with some fast primes and maybe a fast zoom that you can use a cheap focal reducer on. Yeah, Sully hooked you up right there. Those are two good brands for focal reducers. Okay, GH5 or A7R2. Man, the GH5, it's too good, as they would say. That's a really tough one. It's going to come down to full frame and low light versus all the stuff the GH5 has to offer. I really dig the GH5. There's really only one problem, and that's built-in ND and the lack of it, and a couple little finicky things, but it's such a solid camera. I really, really do dig that. So probably the GH5, but everyone knows I'm kind of leaning on the high end or medium end to Panasonic there. Okay, just use the MixPre 3. Nice, Sully. Yeah, I have it right here. I haven't used it yet. There's two things I'm hoping to implement to the studio shortly, and that's the MixPre 3, which I'm super excited about, and I love the size. It's just right. It's not tiny where it's hard to change the knobs, but it's not huge either. And the only thing I don't like is this stinking battery setup on the back. So here's where you put the batteries in, and the SD card is like inside of it. So if you want to swap cards or whatnot, I wish they had just moved the display over just a little bit or shrunk the display. That would have been nice, and that way we could have easily have access to the SD card. Okay, let's see. Is it worth investing in a slider while investing in a glide cam for wedding work? If I were starting, I don't do weddings, but I've done a couple in the past, and it's not really my favorite thing. But if I were doing weddings today, I would get rid of everything but that Zhiyun crane. So that thing is fantastic. You can get slider-esque movement, but the flexibility you have and the mobility, sliders just suck, man. They're so painful to work with unless you have lots of time to set up. So that's probably what I do. Cheap, good Nikon lens. Anything that's a prime that has AIS at the end of it is really good from them. You can get a lot of that stuff online. They're 50mm f1.8. They have a great 28mm f2 that I really like. There's a lot of good stuff from them, but you can find some good deals on eBay. How did you first make money making films? I did a lot of volunteer stuff and just whatever I could for free. And then I think my first gig was shooting or filming broadcast at a church, and they would hire me to someone would come in and do a wedding or an event, and then they'd pay me to be a shooter there. Then I got a gig as a kind of grip/camera for this one producer, and it's just real small stuff, very infrequent. And then over time, just working hard, and that's what I had going for me. I think was I didn't know much, but I was willing to just get in there, and whatever you needed, I had you covered. And I think that's what kind of eventually gave me the opportunity to learn more and work with other people. I don't know about cages for the 5D Mark III, Matthew, but I do have a video coming up on universal cages. There's some great ones out there. It's hard to go wrong with Small Rig, the brand Small Rig. That's good stuff. What matters more in a PC build to edit 4K? A good CPU, some RAM. Probably the CPU is a big one. So getting like a quad i5 or i7 rather would be a good move. And graphics card isn't as important, but CPU and RAM I think are pretty key. Correct me if I'm wrong, people who know more about PC building. Soundproofing on the go. That's a good question. Zai and Cool Things asked that. These sound blankets that I use in the studio, Producer Choice. If you Google Producer Choice sound blankets, you'll find them. You can buy one or many packs of them. They're just really heavy-duty blankets, so you could put them on even just putting them on the ground underneath someone is great. I did one shoot where we built with C-stands kind of a box and then draped one of those over it, and that worked really well. I know a lot of guys build something that folds open and they can prop down and that has foam or some kind of blanket setup. But those blankets work really well, especially those. They're designed for us sound and video people, so they're really deadening, which is awesome. Okay. Let us see. GPU can also be helpful for editing, rendering. Thanks for that tip, Tornado, for those who asked about computer stuff earlier. Does the internal stabilization work with Speed Booster? Yes. So if you have a Speed Booster or focal reducer, pretty much anything you attach to a G85 or a GH5, you will still have stabilization. Obviously, you're not going to be using Panasonic lenses anymore, so you won't have that dual IS, but you'll still be covered there. And Panasonic has kind of two body modes. There's just stabilization, which is the 5-axis, And then you can also turn on video stabilization. So it'll actually crop in a little further and give you essentially what you would do in post, but it works really well in camera. So if you know you're going to be just going crazy with that camera and you want as much stabilization as possible, you can turn on video stabilization and that'll work really well. Do I know any good cheap ND filters? So I've been meaning to do a video on this, and here's the deal. Everyone loves fader NDs, but if you use those, you're actually going to run into some potentially serious problems, because the way that works is there's two polarizers working against each other. And if you use a polarizer, you're going to be changing how light reflects on people's skin, leaves, everything. So the problem with faders is if you shoot a whole project and you're constantly changing that fader, you're changing the way the light is working on everything. So when you go down to edit, some shots, have you ever noticed how some shots are like, oh, it's just perfect. But then other ones, they have this weird soupy flatness to them, and you run into all these problems. So you got to kind of take that into consideration. So I prefer just ND filters. So you can go, there's a lot of great stuff on Amazon. Tiffin is a safe way to play if you want some high-end stuff but not spend ungodly sums of money. But that's kind of the lowdown there. And I would also recommend getting those X-Zoom adapters, X-U-M-E. They're magnetic, so you could have an ND2, 3, and maybe a 6, and then just they magnetically snap on. You could take them off, put them in a bag, stack them, things like that. Yes, and the color cast, of course, on the cheaper ones. I still use them on really quick stuff, like if I'm going to be vlogging, which I just finished a video on. It's really nice just to be able to tweak that exposure a little bit. So, depends on what you're shooting. Not going to answer that. Appreciate the interest. Yeah. Oh, yeah, so Manfrotto bought that company, X-Zoom. So, let us see. Probably going to go for another 5-10 minutes here. Any videos or advice on storytelling? Man, that's a big one. I'd have to cover that more in the future. I don't know if I can do a quick answer on that. It's more than just shooting with footage and camera tests for sure. So that's a good topic that I should bring that up. How do I feel about C-stands? I love them and hate them a lot. They are so versatile, and I enjoy what you can do with them. It's pretty amazing, but they're just so difficult to travel with. So I use them here in the studio. I love them for studio use. If I'm doing a gig where I'm going to be shooting for several days at a location, we did that a lot, and then I would use C-stands. But if I'm just running in for an interview and getting out, I'm going to work with something else. There's just too much weight there. Let's see. All right. Heavy footprint C-stands are annoying, yes. But there's nothing like them in all that they can do. Yeah, DSLR Guide would be a great place to, if you really want to jump into storytelling. He's got a lot of good stuff on narrative. Okay. So yeah, a lot of people ask about the C200. That and the new Panasonic EVA1. I think they're fantastic. I'll probably not buy them though. That's just a lot of money to spend on a YouTube camera. But if I was shooting any kind of regular work, or if I was a shooter getting hired, those would be something I would definitely look at. Probably leaning toward that Panasonic, although Sony, the same day, essentially as that came out, said, hey, wait, we've got a full-frame cinema camera coming up, which I would also be curious to see what they do with, for sure. Let's see. Okay, Ninja Flame or Inferno. I'm still trying to study up on that. I actually have a Inferno right here, and I'm going to be doing a lot of content on that for the GH5 guide I have coming up. And there's a video someone did that I was just watching. I'll have to pull it up here and try to hunt it down. But I believe it comes down to 4K 60. And correct me if I'm wrong, people. I gotta find this guy's video. There's someone who did like a 15-minute video. It's very funny, and he did a great job on that. It's interesting whether or not I want to recommend this. I mean, it's amazing. It's incredible what you can do with it. The only thing I don't like is the size, and that's just life. It's it's a 7-inch monitor that does all that it does, but it is, man, that's a lot to put on. Here, I'll just do it right now. Just throw it on the GH5 here. It's about the same weight, and I don't even have batteries on here yet. But the screen, holy smokes! There it is. It almost makes more sense to do this. The screen, that it's hard to believe that 8 or 1500 nit brightness. That's what, 3 iPhones. It's really, really bright, and that HDR slider is incredible. So I'll cover that before long. Yeah, they had small units, and I think it'll be interesting to see if they do something smaller in the future. Their little Ninja Star, if they do something like that, maybe even I'd be fine with it bigger. But if they did something like that without a screen, or with just a little recorder without the screen, would be really cool to see from them. All right. Cheapest 4K DSLR / mirrorless. That's going to be, if you want interchangeable lenses, the G7. One-man band tips. More than one camera is crucial. Redundancy. It's all about redundancy. So if you're shooting interviews and whatnot, you gotta have 2 of everything. So use a recorder, record on the camera, have a safety track and a pad set on one channel, so you're set for all that good stuff. And then try to figure out how you can get more crew involved. So that kind of goes back to earlier I was talking about. I'd take a sound guy over having more gear any day for sure. Vager Primes, I should shoot with them. They look awesome. If I were shooting more non-zoom lens content, I would go for that. If I was out doing more documentary or more narrative stuff, music videos, that would make a lot of sense. They look awesome for what they cost for sure. Let's see, who am I supposed to answer here? Heck yeah, William Guth. He says he's in Chicago too. Look him up. Let's see. Blackmagic micro cameras. I feel like it's very specific, that camera. The fact that it's just a camera brain with a lens mount and buttons and a battery, you kind of got to build that up, which by the time you do that doesn't really make sense, unless that's what you need, essentially a monster GoPro. Then that makes sense for sure. Let us see. Yeah, Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 2.0. Shiznuts. Sorry about your name there, butchered that. Yeah, I would love to see a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera. In fact, I've been searching for a small sensor cinema something that shoots with a small sensor, really small, and 24 frames per second. That isn't a Blackmagic Pocket, because I've been buying some 8mm lenses, so like D-mount, not C-mount, D-mount lenses. They're tiny. There's one, I'll have to grab one at some point, but they're so small, and there's a ton of them out there, and they're awesome. So I'd love to get a tiny sensor that I could use with that. Pentax makes a camera that can do that, but would love to do that. Can we look at my show reel elsewhere? I'll have to figure out if it's still up anywhere, but I do have one from years ago, and then a lot of the content was for different producers and then their clients, so it was either crazy boring stuff or it just wasn't something I could really share. How do I get inspiration for videos? For my videos or just videos in general? For my videos, all the time I'm like, someday this is going to run out. Someday this is all going to end. I'm not going to run out of ideas. But I've got a wall over on this side that is just loaded with sticky notes. And I'm trying to do more videos per week because I feel like I can't keep up with the ideas and that I'm having for videos. So it's just little problems I have. Like, man, this little thing here isn't staying on this cage. Like, oh, I should cover this. Or it's something that I wish I had seen when I got started. So there's a lot of content I've produced that I wish was available when I got started for someone at my level. All right. Let us see. Rokinon Cine. What are my thoughts on it? From Will Media. I like them. I feel like there's not a lot of character with them, and the color is a little funky, which is fine because that can be fixed in camera. But I think they're a great budget option. I just never really got into starting a set or even buying one or two of them because Nikon, Pentax, Canon FD lenses, all that stuff are still available, so you can find some really good glass. They don't have that soul, so that's probably why I don't have any. But they're great lenses. All right, guys, I think we are going to bounce. Thank you so much for joining me. I wasn't expecting this to happen and to be looking over here instead of up here as much. So going forward, let me know what you thought of this. If you thought this went sort of well at all. I'm thinking about maybe doing something like this, but doing more of a specific topic. Maybe I'll cover how I got started, start to finish. Or we can pick kind of a subject to cover, something like that. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Let me know in the comments here, and for those watching this post live, you guys are awesome. All of this is your fault, by the way. The whole reason that I'm here, that videos are coming out weekly, are because of you guys. So thank you so much for the support. It's been an honor, and it will continue to be an honor. I don't know why I just said that. Hope you guys have a great evening, and I will talk to you and see you in future videos and streams. Have a good one.